Thou art the devil.
In the 80s, it seemed like everything competed with everything else to be over the top and extravagant. Be it the cartels from Mexico and Colombia or sword and sorcery movies from Hollywood, the 80s had some serious brass. We got the first Conan movie in 1982, and others wanted to ride the tide. Naturally, many fantasy films hit theaters and TV screens, and while not all of them did great, owing to various reasons, a few turned out to be fairly decent despite their extremely tight budgets, and in this video, we're going to be exploring 15 such movies. Before we get into things, please consider hitting those like and subscribe buttons. Those 2 tiny clicks from you are tremendously helpful in bringing you more of these marvelous videos. And now, let's begin. Hundra, 1983. Hundra, a proud Amazon warrior, grows up in a female-only tribe that views men as unnecessary distractions. She alone has never taken a man to bed and vows to never do so. One day, while she hunts, male barbarians storm her village and butcher her entire clan. Hundra rushes back, finds the devastation, and visits a wise woman for guidance. To her shock, she learns that she must bear a child or risk seeing her tribe's lineage end. Horrified but duty-bound, she ventures out to find a worthy father. Her first attempt involves a vile creep with zero manners, which ends badly. She then clashes with a cruel robber baron and later crosses paths with a suspicious pimp, neither of whom qualifies for her plan. Eventually, she meets a gentle healer who treats her with respect, though he refuses her blunt request to father a child. Frustrated, Hundra enlists local women to help soften him up. Their strategy succeeds. She becomes pregnant and delivers a daughter. All hell breaks loose when a pagan priest kidnaps the newborn. Hundra endures a humiliating ritual, but learns her allies have already rescued her baby. Fueled by rage, she rallies her formidable skills, confronts her enemies, and crushes them. With her daughter safe, she returns home, and a final voiceover praises her indomitable spirit that seems to live in every determined woman. Hundra radiates a fiery warrior energy that sets her apart from most sword and sorcery heroines. She has a fierce resolve to guard her tribe's future, and her refusal to bow to society's rules makes her compelling. The film leans more towards real female empowerment than cheap titillation, though a few moments feel gratuitous. The middle section drags a bit when she hits the city and the story stalls, but her bold attitude keeps us engaged. Her strength transcends brute force, showing hope and resilience instead of shallow exploitative tropes. Despite a lull in pacing, Hundra is a defiant piece of 1980s fantasy cinema that celebrates a woman's will to survive and protect her own. Barbarian Queen, 1985. On her wedding day, Princess Amathea plans to unite with Prince Argon and seal peace for their happy village. That dream evaporates when Lord Autakur's troops raid without warning. They slaughter innocents, capture Argon, and drag away Amathea's little sister, Taramis. Amathea, her loyal handmaiden, and a fierce female warrior survive the massacre through sheer luck. Fueled by vengeance, they set off to rescue their people. They encounter a few of Autakur's scouts and free Taramis, who suffers severe trauma from her assault. Pressing on, Amathea arrives at Autakur's city, where rebels agree to help her slip inside, but refuse a direct fight. Within the fortress walls, Argon and other villagers endure brutal gladiatorial matches for the crowd's sick amusement. Meanwhile, Amathea's handmaiden falls victim to the guards' cruelty. Amathea tries to save her, but the warrior dies in the attempt, and Amathea is captured and tortured. Hope glimmers when the captured gladiators, Argon among them, plot a revolt. Amathea escapes her torment and bands with the rebels, forging a plan to storm Autakur's stronghold. As they clash with Autakur's forces, the gladiators join in, overthrowing the tyrant and liberating the entire city. In the end, Amathea reclaims her kingdom, remains triumphant with her loved ones, and vows never to let such injustice take root again. Barbarian Queen delivers classic sword and sorcery flair with blood-soaked action, skimpy costumes, and raw brutality. Amathea, played by Lana Clarkson, rises as a no-nonsense leader, determined to shield her people at any cost. The movie wastes no time throwing her into perilous battles and sweaty gladiatorial brawls. The final showdown with Lord Autakur is savage, showing intense swordplay and unflinching cruelty. Though the dialogue drips with cheese, that's part of the retro charm in these fantasy flicks. The violence and sexual assaults may push boundaries for some viewers, but fans of gritty 80s adventures might appreciate its bold, take-no-prisoners energy. It's not Shakespeare, but it offers a pulpy, relentless ride where the heroine's gutsy spirit shreds typical damsel tropes. Thor the Conqueror. 1983, Thor enters the world with tragedy hanging over him. Moments after his birth, Nut and his men murder Thor's parents. The spirit god Etna intervenes, takes the infant to safety, and oversees his upbringing from the shadows. Under Etna's mystical watch, Thor grows into a muscular fighter destined to avenge his parents and reclaim peace for his homeland. He wanders through wild territories, hunts for clues to his father's past, and learns of a legendary sword once held by his slain father. During his journey, Thor meets Ina, a formidable virgin warrior who becomes his devoted companion. Their bond deepens and they share a desire to topple Nut, the warlord who left Thor an orphan. The path to justice is cluttered with random magical occurrences. Strange illusions, hidden shrines, and cryptic guidance test Thor's might. He slices through foes with raw power, but the battles start feeling repetitive as the same pattern of ambush and retaliation are seen throughout. At last, Thor tracks down his father's sword in a remote cavern, unlocks deeper combat skills, and strides forth to confront Nut in a climactic clash. Etna's influence lingers, urging Thor to fulfill his destiny. In a final stand, Thor triumphs, avenges his parents, and frees the land from Nut's rule. The film ends with Thor towering over his newly secured domain, Ina by his side, while Etna's divine figure fades back into the unknown. Thor the Conqueror fits snugly into the 80s Italian sword and sorcery wave, complete with cheap sets, bizarre magic, and non-stop skirmishes. Critics call it a so-bad-it's-good gem loaded with awkward fight scenes that repeat the same hack-and-slash formula. The plot barely holds together. Thor's quest unfolds like scattered episodes with random mystical events, but the movie never hits a dull moment. Etna's outlandish costuming, or shoulder pads, offer unintentional comedy, and the frequent battles, while clumsy, at least keep the energy levels high. Yeah, the dialogue is stiff and the gender politics feel dated, but fans of trashy cult cinema may find entertainment in its unpolished charm. You might groan at its flaws, yet you'll probably keep watching, drawn in by its sincere, if misguided, enthusiasm. Hawk the Slayer. 1980. Voltan, a ruthless warrior, barges into his own father's castle and demands the key to an ancient power, the last elven Mind Stone. The old king refuses, so Voltan strikes him down in cold blood. Just before dying, the king hands a special sword to his other son, Hawk. This weapon has a pommel shaped like a human hand which connects with the elven Mind Stone to form the magical Mind Sword. It responds to Hawk's thoughts, making him a fearsome force. With his father gone, Hawk swears he'll hunt down Voltan and avenge the murder. Voltan's chaos spreads across the countryside. Meanwhile, a battered warrior named Ranulf shows up at a remote convent, half dead and missing a hand. Casualties of Voltan's vicious raid on his people. The nuns care for him, but soon Voltan himself storms the convent, snatching the abbess and demanding a hefty ransom in gold. The nuns send Ranulf to the High Abbot at Danesford, who tells him only Hawk can save them. Ranulf tracks down Hawk, who rescues him from a gang of thugs. Ranulf explains the abbess's capture, and Hawk agrees to help. Hawk recruits his old pals, Gort, a hammer-wielding giant, Crow, an elf with razor-sharp archery skills, and Baldin, a dwarf who's handy with a whip. Together, they raid a slave trader's stash to gather enough gold for the ransom. With the team assembled and the Mind Sword glimmering with power, Hawk sets his sights on crushing Voltan once and for all. Hawk the Slayer kicked off the early 80s sword and sorcery craze, though its microscopic budget shows. Sets rarely go beyond forest clearings, and the effects lean on colorful flashes and cheap animation, reminiscent of vintage Doctor Who. While the plot may be slight, fans still cling to its quirky charm. The movie's slow-motion action tends to be overdone, but you can't deny the fun of seeing a giant, a dwarf, and an elf united under Hawk's leadership. The disco-tinged score stands out as either bizarre or brilliant depending on your tastes, though ultimately, nostalgia and Jack Palance's over-the-top villainy keep this scrappy flick alive in the hearts of cult aficionados. Conquest. 1983. Ilias, a young man fresh from his idyllic home, sets out with a magical bow gifted by his father. The land he enters is thick with a spooky fog and crawling with deadly creatures. Okron, a half-naked masked sorceress, rules these monsters, and her drug-fueled visions reveal a faceless youth wielding a bow that threatens her. She orders her underlings to find and destroy this enemy. Ilias soon runs into a gang of Okron's minions who try to steal his bow. His luck shifts when Mace, a loner who prefers animals to people, jumps into the fight and sends the marauders running. The two become uneasy allies, united by a shared urge to topple Okron's reign. In a random twist, Mace slays a passing hunter, and both men swipe his game, showing that neither is squeaky clean. Okron keeps sending wave after wave of creatures, led by Fado, but they fail to capture Ilias. One night, raiders murder a tribal girl who caught Ilias's eye and carry him away. Mace frees him in a bloody skirmish. Okron, furious at her underlings' incompetence, summons the spirit Zora, a white wolf in which she invests her body and soul, desperate to snuff out Ilias. Ilias, determined to punish Okron, begs Mace to stand and fight. Mace refuses at first. Okron's magic is no joke, but he helps ferry Ilias towards her fortress. A poisonous arrow fells Ilias, forcing Mace to seek a rare plant for the cure. Through battles with zombies and illusions, Mace learns that Okron's threats run deeper than expected, and a final showdown against her twisted evil looms on the horizon. Conquest offers a jarring combination of ambition and sloppy execution. On one hand, it surprises with a big story twist later on, challenging usual sword and sorcery tropes and turning the hero's arc upside down. But the overall product remains murky, literally. Smoke machines and poor lighting leave scenes nearly impossible to make out, and the Wolfmen costumes look like cheap holiday outfits. The special effects, like scratched-on quills and questionable giant beasts, only heighten that rough-around-the-edges vibe. Despite these flaws, there's an oddball spirit that some viewers find endearing. It's a messy, low-budget ride, but it has flashes of genre-bending originality. The Sword and the Sorcerer, 1982. When King Titus Cromwell sails to Tomb Island, he's looking for an edge in his war against King Richard of Aden, the richest land around. He awakens Zuzia, a centuries-dead sorcerer, and forges a shaky deal. Zuzia's black magic in exchange for vengeance on Richard. The plan works too well. Cromwell easily smashes Richard's forces, but he fears the sorcerer might turn on him, so Cromwell stabs Zuzia and dumps his body off of a cliff. With Richard's kingdom on the brink, the king commands his family to flee. He hands his son Talon a triple-bladed sword, with one blade that can even fire like a projectile, and charges him to avenge the royal murder if things go south. Indeed, Cromwell executes Richard and hunts down the queen, but Talon narrowly escapes. Fast forward 11 years, Talon reappears as a seasoned rogue, eager to settle the score with Cromwell. Meanwhile, the rebellious Prince Micah, who many believe is Adan's rightful heir, struggles to overthrow the tyrant from within. His sister Alana attempts to carry messages but ends up cornered by Cromwell's thugs. Talon rescues her and learns Micah is imprisoned along with rebel forces. Alana has nothing to offer Talon but herself for one night if he'll bust her brother out. Talon agrees, but Cromwell's men swoop in again and capture Alana. It's soon clear that Zuzia survived and wants to ruin Cromwell. Everyone converges in the castle's dark corridors. Talon, Micah, Alana, the rebels, and a vengeful sorcerer. Cromwell's desperation hits a fever pitch, with Talon's weird triple-bladed sword slicing through foes. Only one warrior can emerge victorious in this wild swirl of magic, rebellion, and old-school revenge. The Sword and the Sorcerer doesn't mimic Conan the Barbarian note for note. Instead, it injects a snappy, swashbuckling tone as if Douglas Fairbanks stumbled into a pulp fantasy world. Talon's wisecracks and triple-bladed antics poke fun at heavier sword and sandal epics. Yet, it made a lasting impact by placing sorcery at the heart of the conflict. Zuzia's magic actively shapes the plot, unlike many fantasy films where spells stay in the background. Critics admire the film's lighter tone and witty banter, although some of the effects appear dated. Overall, it's energetic and occasionally campy, and it helped define the more playful side of 80's sword and sorcery. The Archer, Fugitive from the Empire, 1981. In the land of Malville, clans constantly clash and a looming superpower called the Dynasty seeks control. King Brachus of the Hawk clan unites several rival tribes under one banner, hoping to create a united front against the Dynasty, but his nephews, Sandros and Rhys, betray him to the Dynasty's warlord, Gar, part man, part snake, who murders Brachus using Torin's dagger, secretly planted to frame the young prince. With his father dying in his arms, Torin promises to find the mysterious figure, Lazar Saw, and carry on the dream of uniting Malville. Wrongfully accused, Torin sits in jail until his mentor, Mac, uses a magical bow to break him free. Together they flee, but Mac's age and exertion prove fatal. He transfers the bow's power to Torin at his death, bonding the weapon to Torin's soul. Torin encounters Slant, a crafty rogue who tries to steal the bow, but Slant grows fond of Torin's gutsiness and tags along. Meanwhile, the sorceress Estra hunts Lazar Saw, determined to avenge her mother's death at Brachus's hands. Their paths converge in Kamal, where a fake Lazar Saw, an embittered ex-slave named Riga, terrorizes the locals. Torin, Estra, and Slant expose him, learning the real Lazar Saw's last known location. Riga kills himself, and Gar shows up to reclaim the gauntlet Riga used for illusions. Torin's arrow destabilizes its stone, causing the entire canyon to collapse, though Torin and friends escape. Estra still wants Lazar Saw dead, Torin aims to fulfill his father's legacy, and Slant just wants to stay alive. All parties brace for another face-off with Gar and the dynasty's deadly snake forces. This TV-style adventure brims with ambition, yet struggles with its 97-minute time frame. The writer built a sprawling fantasy world and deep lore, but the story feels overstuffed. Important relationships slip by too fast, and some crucial plot points go unexplained. However, the production nails a few pieces. The Snake Men, in particular, have striking makeup and a creepy presence. Belinda Bauer's performance as the vengeful Estra injects genuine intrigue whenever she appears. Despite its small budget, The Archer, fugitive from the Empire, tries to deliver a grand scope. Just don't expect the polished pacing or clarity you'd find in modern fantasy epics. The Sword of the Barbarians, 1982. Sangral, son of King Ator, sees his homeland destroyed by the cruel warlord Nantuk. With his people decimated, Sangral and the few survivors wander in search of safety. They find hope when a friendly village welcomes them, led by Bellum, who's so grateful for Sangral's heroics that he offers joint leadership. But Nantuk, who dabbles with a fiery goddess demanding Sangral's blood, orders fresh raids to hunt down and sacrifice him. Nantuk's troops storm the village, slaughtering everyone and stringing Sangral up on a crucifix to watch his wife die. Sangral collapses, but Ati, Bellum's daughter, and Li Wo Tuan, a skilled archer, rescue him. Haunted by his wife's murder, Sangral heads off to seek help from the powerful wizard Rudak, believing he can bring her back. Rudak, however, tells him no magic can undo death. Instead, he urges Sangral to embrace his destiny, to free the land from Nantuk's evil. Rudak points him towards a sacred shrine that holds a mystical crossbow capable of tipping the balance. Traveling across treacherous terrain, Sangral's party evades ambushes and battles unseen foes. Li Wo Tuan dies in one of these skirmishes, and Ati ends up being captured. Sangral finally reaches the shrine, grabs the potent crossbow, and storms Nantuk's stronghold. The vengeful barbarian duels the warlord, running him through with his own dagger near the altar of the ruthless goddess. In destroying Nantuk, Sangral frees the land from her cruel demands and emerges as a hardened savior, ready to rebuild what was lost. Sword of the Barbarians copies the basic blueprint from Conan: tragic slaughter, quest for revenge, mystical MacGuffin, yet it stumbles with repetitive wilderness battles and zero character depth. As with many Italian sword and sorcery flicks, the production skimps on sets and filming occurs mostly in open countryside. The result is cheap but gleefully bloody, echoing that 1980s B-movie style. The leads do fine with the physical stuff, though their acting is pretty stiff. The film's no creative breakthrough, but it remains a scrappy slice of old-school barbarian fun for anyone who adores vintage fantasy tropes, even if they're not the most original. Ator, the Fighting Eagle, 1982. A prophecy warns that a child named Ator will one day destroy the ruling spider cult. The cult's high priest tries to kill the infant, but a mysterious warrior, Griba, whisks baby Ator away and hides him with a new family. Years pass and Ator grows into a broad-shouldered young man in love with his sister, Sonia, though he soon learns they're not blood relatives. Their wedding day turns into a nightmare when the spider cult's soldiers invade, snatch Sonia, and slaughter the villagers. Ator embarks on a rescue mission. Griba reappears, trains him in combat, and vanishes again, leaving Ator to fend for himself. During his journey, he's kidnapped by a tribe of Amazons, escapes with the help of the feisty warrior woman Rune, and faces off against a seductive witch. He retrieves a magical mirrored shield essential for battling the cult's monstrous spider god. At last, Ator storms the cult's temple, kills the high priest Dakar, then discovers Griba's real plan: to to rule the spider cult himself. Ator fights both Greba and the giant spider, emerging victorious by turning their own dark powers against them. With the cult destroyed, Ator reunites with Sonya, and the two walk free towards a presumably peaceful future. Ator is a goofy Italian riff on Conan the Barbarian, stuffed with random plot detours and questionable continuity. There's little blood or skin, yet we get undead warriors, Amazons, and a massive puppet spider. Miles O'Keefe cuts a decent figure, but delivers a wooden performance, sporting costumes that blend an 80s glam metal aesthetic with pseudo-Mongolian flair. The script, partly penned by Michelle Soavi, who remains uncredited, gets silly and disjointed, but the playful spirit wins some fans. Carlo Maria Cordio, the film's composer, is the film's most solid element. It's no masterpiece, but it's a cult favorite for those who enjoy campy sword and sorcery shenanigans. Hearts and Armor, 1983. Bradamante consults a witch who reveals she'll fall in love with a Moorish warrior named Ruggiero, destined to die by the hand of Orlando. That's not the news she wants. Soon after, rapists ambush her, but a phantom knight swoops in, defeats them, and gifts Bradamante his armor. Determined to protect herself, she suits up as a fearsome female knight. She rescues a Moorish princess known as Angelica, though the credits oddly call her Isabella, from the very same band of creeps. Bradamante claims Angelica as her prisoner and meets Orlando, leader of a squad of knights with outlandish helmets. Ganelon, one of Orlando's men, challenges Bradamante to a duel but loses, learning to his shock that she's a woman. Bradamante recognizes Orlando from the prophecy, so she sticks around his group, suspecting she'll cross paths with Ruggiero sooner or later. Meanwhile, the Moorish caliph orders Ruggiero to retrieve Angelica. Ruggiero's fiancée, Marfisa, begs him not to go, but off he rides. Atlante, a wizard, intervenes, whisking Ruggiero away whenever disaster looms, hoping to prevent the prophecy's bloody outcome. Orlando and his knights bicker over strategy while Angelica slips through their fingers and tangles with Pharaoh, a love-struck Moor with black-feathered armor. The Caliph grows impatient and recruits a trio of weird mercenaries to eliminate the Christian knights. Hearts break and swords clash. With cross-cultural romances, illusions, and surprise betrayals, events spiral into a free-for-all of misunderstood motives. Whether Ruggiero and Bradamante can change their tragic fate depends on Atlante's spells and their own willingness to defy the prophecy. Hearts and Armor adapts elements from the epic poem Orlando Furioso, but it trims a lot. No hippogriffs, no big sea creatures, while juggling multiple subplots. The result is visually lavish but narratively choppy, possibly because it was cut down from a longer version, although that's unconfirmed. Audiences see big, eccentric helmets and swirling romance, yet the story often feels disjointed. The film looks colorful and it doesn't hold back on dramatic flair, but many characters come and go too fast to leave a mark. If you're in for elaborate costumes and swirling medieval drama, it's a decent watch, though it struggles to maintain coherence. The Seven Magnificent Gladiators, 1983. In a kingdom ravaged by the ruthless tyrant Nichirote, one village lives in fear as he seizes their food supply every year. The villagers turn to a mystical sword which supposedly points them towards their savior. The blade leads them straight to Han, played by Lou Ferrigno, a slave gladiator with impressive might. He teams up with his old buddy Scipio, played by Brad Harris, and together they recruit 5 more warriors to make a stand against Nichirote. Among them is Julia, played by Sybil Danning, a tough fighter who's more than ready to slice through a horde of soldiers. Scipio and Julia develop a spark, while Han's interest lies in Pandora, played by Ferrigno's real-life wife, Carla. Their ragtag group, dubbed the Seven Magnificent Gladiators, heads to the endangered village and trains the locals to defend themselves. Nichirote's cruelty includes a twisted outfit and an even more twisted appetite for power, but these mercenaries are determined to break his stranglehold on the region. Before long, the final showdown erupts with swords clashing, arrows flying, and the villagers standing side by side with their newfound heroes. Nichirote wields a vicious grip, but the 7 gladiators pool their strengths: fearless leadership, cunning strategy, and sheer muscle. The film builds to a dramatic, old-fashioned melee where honor, loyalty, and grit triumph over tyranny. When the dust settles, the village regains its peace, and the surviving gladiators ride off, having left their mark on the people they saved. A Canon Films classic directed by Bruno Mattei and co-written by Claudio Fragasso, The Seven Magnificent Gladiators riffs on Seven Samurai / The Magnificent Seven, but sets it in a sword and sandal universe. Despite its low budget, it's surprisingly earnest, filmed largely outdoors for a slightly grander feel. Brigno, Danning, and Harris, fresh off of Hercules, bring enough charisma to keep it watchable. The villain's flamboyant costuming adds a kitschy spark. It's not exactly subtle or polished, but it's more sincere than one might expect from Matei's usual cheese fests. If you dig old-school epics with a dash of 1980s camp, this one fits the bill. The Warrior and the Sorceress, 1984. Cain, the last Homerak warrior priest, roams a two-sunned world in search of mercenary gigs. He drifts into Yamatar, a desert settlement locked in a tug-of-war between two warlords, Zeg and Balkaz, who each want exclusive control of the town's only well. The townsfolk live like slaves, forced to obey whichever boss holds the water supply that week. Cain's sense of justice flares, so he decides to play both sides against each other. He sees Prelate Bludge, another relic of the Old Faith, and discovers that Zeg has captured Naja, the prelate's daughter. She alone can restore the sacred sword of Yura, a weapon with the power to crush armies. Zeg needs that blade to conquer Balkaz, but Naja keeps botching the enchantment on purpose. Meanwhile, Balkaz hires Cain for a steep price, then plots to betray him. Cain outsmarts both warlords, leaving them to bicker while he secretly reroutes the well's water, making it seem like the source has dried up. This ruse triggers chaos on both sides. Slaver Master Burgo stumbles in, outraged by poison-laced gourds tied to Zeg. Tensions explode. Cain frees Naja, tangles with Zeg's sneaky henchman Keef, and fends off hordes of mercenaries. Burgo returns for revenge, adding a third faction to the fray. The final clash pits everyone against everyone at Yamatar's fortress gates, with Cain's unmatched swordsmanship standing between the oppressed villagers and total annihilation. In the end, he ensures no tyrant is left standing, forcing Yamatar to forge a new destiny without warlords hogging the well. The Warrior and the Sorceress openly borrows from Yojimbo, swapping samurai swords for fantasy steel. It's cheap, with sparse sets and plenty of rubbery creature effects. Still, David Carradine delivers a confident performance as Cain, balancing sly humor and stoic heroism. The film ups its exploitative edge with frequent nudity, yet the swordplay is surprisingly well choreographed. Fans love it for that 80s sword and sorcery vibe, gritty, low-rent, and brimming with double crosses. Yes, it's silly and over the top, but that's part of its charm. For those who appreciate pulpy fantasy with a dash of spaghetti western trickery, it's a quick, campy treat. Iron Master, 1983. Vood, a hot-headed hunter from the tribe of Great Zog, expects to succeed his father, Ixay, as chief. Ixay disagrees, believing Vood's impulsive behavior poses a danger to his people. Instead, he favors the calmer, less flashy Ela. Angry at this rejection, Vood murders Ixay during a boar hunt, though he thinks no one sees. Ela, however, catches him in the act. Vood then kills the tribe's shaman in his bid to eliminate witnesses. With blood on his hands, the tribe banishes him, and Ela steps in to keep everyone safe. Exiled and alone, Vood wanders near a rumbling volcano. When it erupts, he pokes around the cooled lava and finds a chunk of iron shaped like a crude sword. This discovery changes the entire game. No one has ever used metal for weapons before, and Vood realizes he holds tremendous power. He soon meets Lith, a suspicious woman who declares that a fire god blessed Vood with this iron. She urges him to conquer all neighboring lands. Vood returns to Great Zog's tribe, wants his new sword, and defeats Ela in a duel. The tribe, too terrified to object, immediately hails him as chief. Vood forces them to forge more iron weapons, something they somehow figure out by building primitive smelters near the volcano. Ela is left for dead in Ursu territory, overrun by hostile ape-like creatures. Luckily, he escapes his bonds, defends himself in a brawl, and meets Issa from a peaceful tribe that abhors violence. Ela recovers, learns that Vood's iron-wielding army has begun massacring anyone in sight, and decides to unite Issa's people against this terrifying threat. What follows is a collision of two ideologies. Vood's savage militarism is fueled by iron swords versus Issa's tribe, who cherishes harmony over bloodshed. Ela struggles to arm these pacifists in time for the inevitable showdown. When the final battle erupts, Ela's side fights for the survival of compassion itself, hoping to break Vood's iron grip before it forever reshapes their world. Director Umberto Lenzi steers his cavemen from wooden spears straight to iron swords in a snap, turning Vood into a ruthless conqueror. The movie never fails to entertain. There is a constant flurry of fights, volcano blasts, and improbable leaps of logic, like forging metal practically overnight. The cave hippies versus cave warmongers angle offers a quirky spin on primal conflicts, though historical accuracy does take a back seat. Fans of cheesy sword and sandal epics will enjoy the raw spectacle of muscle-bound brawls, lavishly unconvincing special effects, and wild leaps in prehistoric progress. Yes, it's goofy, but it keeps viewers hooked with its spirited mix of chaos and campy charm. Gunan, King of the Barbarians, 1982. A prophecy predicts the birth of a mighty warrior who will deliver his people from the savage Ungats. Turns out, 2 baby boys fit that prophecy, though only one can ascend to legendary status. When the Ungats raid their village, an Amazon rescues both infants and brings them to the Kuniat tribe. As they grow, Gunan proves stronger than his brother and eventually trains under the Kuniat's wings, sharpening both sword skills and a fierce sense of justice. He learns it's his destiny to crush the Ungats and avenge his ravaged homeland. Gunan embarks on his quest, marching across dusty landscapes and rallying allies. His imposing physique and unwavering determination inspires those around him. Some rumored him to be unstoppable, but not everyone believes the prophecy. An unexpected romance distracts him at the worst moment, leaving him vulnerable to ambush. Meanwhile, Ungat forces push deeper into neighboring lands, driving terror wherever they go. Gunan's path includes bizarre brushes with magic, questionable illnesses, and improbable challenges that sometimes border on downright silly. But he's too determined to see the humor in these distractions. He must punish the Ungats for their cruelty. Clashes intensify, and Gunan's swordsmanship faces its biggest tests. Battles erupt with wobbly prop blades and often hilariously over-the-top choreography. One savage moment involves disembowelment, complete with phony guts that look fresh off a Halloween store shelf. Gunan's love interest frequently loses her outfit as if fate or sloppy screenwriting conspires to keep her half naked. Even a torture scene seems more awkward than disturbing, involving spikes and forced intimacy. Through every off-kilter twist, Gunan pushes forward, refusing to let his prophecy slip away. When he finally meets the Ungat leader in a showdown, the fate of his entire tribe hinges on whether Gunan truly is the unstoppable barbarian foretold by legend. Gunan, King of the Barbarians, may not deliver Shakespearean gravitas, but it piles on the campy fun. The story sprinkles in random prophecies, tribal customs, and wacky sword duels to keep genre enthusiasts happy. Yes, it's ham-fisted, performances are theatrical, dialogue is hilariously off-base, and the plot wanders in a swirl of legends and romance. The English dub ratchets up the silliness, making each line feel more grandiose than it should. Expect half-hearted bloodshed, mild nudity, flimsy weapons, and costumes that fall apart mid-battle. Fans of bizarre 80s sword and sandal flicks will find plenty to grin about, from overdone slow-motion runs to pro-wrestling moves. For viewers craving low-budget fantasy chaos, Gunan offers a cheerful plunge into one of the weirder corners of the barbarian subgenre. And finally, to round out our list, as a special mention, we have Alter, 1985, at number 15. This is a story about a young Alter whose family is massacred by the Master of Fire. Before losing his life, his father manages to save him. Alter grows up in captivity and is forced to fight for money, but now that he's grown up, he lusts for revenge. It sounds a lot similar to the tale of Conan, but then again, so do a lot of these movies. That's all we got for you this time, but if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Otherwise, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.